get more on this and speak to Matthew Schmidt, Associate Professor in the National Security Department at the University of New Haven. Thanks very much for being with us. We saw this offer from President Zelensky last week. Can you just tell us what exactly Ukraine is offering in concrete terms and to which countries?
Thanks. It's good to be back. Ukraine sees this as an opportunity to put itself back in the limelight and say, hey, look what we're doing. Look what we can do for you now that you need us. Maybe you can help us again. And what he's doing is sending a couple of teams down to assess the situation and then, go back to Ukraine and see a variety of things, right? What kind of interceptors do you need? There's a range. You need a layered kind of defense. So you have some of these small copters, which are useful inside of 2 kilometers. Then you need larger mid-sized drones that are going to work out to 20 and 30 kilometers. Then you need to think about radar systems. And a critical thing that most people don't recognize is the bottleneck of training drone pilots, right? And so there are specialized firms in Ukraine that are really good at breaking that bottleneck and training pilots quickly and at scale. And then you have to put that all together and you have to come up with some kind of manufacturing plan to be able to do that on site. And again, Ukraine, in the middle of a shooting war, is the largest producer of drones on the planet. Why? Because it's figured out the manufacturing project. So that's a lot of what's going on here, very rapidly.
There's been some surprise in some quarters that other parts of the world haven't adopted this technology and expertise more rapidly, given the very unstable situation that the world finds itself in at the moment. How long would it take, for example, for this technology to be adopted, to be manufactured, for that capacity to be built up, for example, in the Middle East by Gulf states and others who might want it?
So, these are countries that have money, and if you apply money to the problem, you can generally make it go faster. The problem you're going to have working with Ukraine is that you have production bottlenecks, and Ukraine needs the drones for their own defense against Russia. So I think you could probably, in some instances with some kinds of drones, put up certain kinds of defense inside of, 2 or 3 or 4 months. I think really you're looking more out towards 6 months and then out towards a year to put in some robust manufacturing capacity. But it's complicated and it depends on how you build that layered defense.
Yeah, and it has to be integrated into existing defence. But there is a sort of cost benefit, effectively, isn't there? Because these systems are much cheaper than the huge traditional missile systems.
Yeah, I think that's important to understand is, the last numbers we have is there's something like 80,000 Shaheds in Iran. Now, a lot of those have been taken out. But what is also going on is there's a factory that Iran built inside the border with Russia that's producing at least 5,000 Shaheds a month. And we're now hearing intelligence reports that is being expanded. Right. And there's every reason for Russia to start to send drones back into Iran for their use here. So I think we get a little bit ahead of ourselves if we look at this today and say, oh, the drone threat is going down, it's declining right now. I think you could very much see an uptick in that in the coming weeks to months. And for sure, in the long run, this is a global problem for decades.
And just very quickly, we did see President Trump and President Putin have a phone call with, kind of President Trump urging Russia not to get involved. Effectively, he said that in the press conference, didn't he? Because joining these conflicts up with the allies that we've got on both sides, obviously, is something that people will be worried about.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, right? Whatever is said on the phone call is one thing, and what happens behind the scenes is another. Does Putin, call out to that drone plant and say, hey, stop production, we're not going to give any to Iran? Or does he just ignore what happened on the phone call? The dynamic here also that we're playing out is the negotiations to get a ceasefire in the war, Russia's war in Ukraine. And that's playing in here too. So it's an extremely dynamic situation going on now in many places.
Matthew Schmidt, very grateful to you for your time today. Thank you so much for being with us.